this extraordinary situation we found ourselves in is that we at Opera Europa have grown to know some of our members better than we ever did. Our team has been involved every day in chats and forums and conference calls. And it's been exciting how many people have been involved in them. We're sad not to be in Helsinki, which at this time of year is always beautiful, sunny, with long days and short nights. But we are pleased to be able to welcome our would-be hosts in Helsinki for a 15-minute conference, which they will now present on the topic of Opera Beyond, thereby proving once and for all that the Finnish nation is the master of terseness. So we hand over to Gita in Helsinki.
Yeah.
Dear colleagues, it's with slight sadness that I welcome you live here in Finnish National Opera and Ballet, since I was very much looking forward to seeing you all in person. Nevertheless, here we are, and I want to thank Director Niklas Payne, President Birgit Svendén, and the entire Opera Europe team for arranging this virtual opportunity to participate and present our interesting project. I'm sure you all can share the feelings of sadness, worry, and even frustration over these few months. My heart goes out to you colleagues who are struggling with finances, questions of reopening and safety, etc. And at the same time, I'm grateful of the collaboration among you all, since the importance of sharing and exchanging experiences is of great significance. Here in Finland, the COVID-19 situation has been very much under control. We have for once been able to utilize our remote location. We've in a way been in a time machine where the virus has reached us later than the rest of the Europe, enabling us to be somewhat proactive as a nation. We've managed to keep the house open for workshops and other critical functions, which hope ensures our next season. Of course, none of us knows how the situation develops over the few coming months. I'm sure you all agree that the importance of mutual shared experiences around the arts events has really proven its place in the society during this crisis. And this is one of the good, positive outcomes of these situations. Another positive viewpoint is the global digital leap. And this, for us here in the FNOB, has been one of the strategic goals, to be the forerunners of combining arts with modern technology, where the outcome is more than the sum of its parts. And at this point, I'm very proud to give the floor to our artistic director, Lili Paasikivi, who will present our ambitious 3-year project, Opera Beyond, which many of you would have heard of. And after Lili, our production director, Timo Tuovila, will present the XR2 tool of 3D designing.
Hello everyone.
Welcome to Almi Hall, our Black Box Theatre, where we are currently building our new immersive installation, Laila. More about that in just a few minutes, but first a few words about the Opera Beyond project. The latest technologies are providing a quantum leap in art world, providing exciting new digital landscapes to explore, and the performing arts are fast joining in. Side by side with the traditional role of an opera house, we at the FNOB want to actively develop and update the possibilities of our art forms. One way to do this is by engaging in the massive technological development in the field of live performance. In this spirit, we launched the Opera Beyond project. This project is a true art expedition with which we want to explore what possibilities emerging tech can bring to performing arts. We focus on the use of immersive technologies such as virtual, augmented and mixed realities, spatial audio, advanced projection mapping, etc. These technologies can open a whole new dimension not only of artistic content, but also of the customer experience and production processes. The Finnish National Opera's artistic partner, conductor and composer Esa-Pekka Salonen once said in an interview, "The world around us is changing, but all we do is play the same bloody violin." Well, naturally, this was said with a bit of humor, but there is a grain of truth in it. We as Opera House have an important role in maintaining and conserving the valuable tradition. But it is equally important to be open-minded, to be in dialogue with the changing world, to join in the development and even lead it when necessary. In our industry, the well-planned and financially solid creative processes have very little tolerance for uncertainty. At the same time, the ambitious creative exploration demands to push boundaries and to leave space for change. Opera Beyond project consists of several different sub-projects, from world premiere immersive experience Laila to various other VR projects, a main stage production in 2022, and virtual tools for production purposes. While the use of immersive technologies is still in its infancy, the leading opera and music institutions are showing increasing interest in finding solutions for reaching new, wider audiences and to enrich the live experience. We are building a co-learning platform where we explore the new digital grounds and share best practices. You are all welcome to join us. Stay tuned for more information. Now you are all invited for a sneak peek to our immersive installation Laila, currently under development. Let's go. Laila is created by composer Esa-Pekka Salonen, dramaturge Paula Vesala, sound designer Tuomas Norvio, and the Echo Collective, a group of artists specialized in the immersive arts. Dome-shaped space, the audience is immersed in dramatic voyage with exciting organic visuals and spatial sound. It deals with the future prospects, hopes, and fears of the development of technology and artificial intelligence. AI is a human-made, self-learning code that mirrors its creators' failures and successes. Through combining a variety of different technologies, from motion tracking to algorithms that modify the music uniquely each time, the AI diva Laila will invite the audience to co-create the work while experiencing it. Therefore, it is a truly interactive experience. Laila is 20 minutes in duration, and it will have its premiere here in Helsinki, August 2020. The installation will later tour various festivals in Europe, North America, and Asia. Laila is currently a finalist in the Fedora Digital Prize competition. Currently, when live performance industry is suffering dramatically from restrictions caused by the COVID epidemic, new digital productions can have an increasing role in our programming. Opera literature is full of passionate opera divas, such as Aida, Salome, and Tosca. These iconic ladies are now joined in by Laila, a diva of the future. Let's hear now how the composer Esa-Pekka Salonen describes her.
Laila is not like you or me. She's very different. She knows everything. She knows the past. She knows the future. She is everywhere and nowhere at the same time. She knows more than you do or I do. We're still working on the concept of AI and my music and how music will function in a 360 immersive project. What will be the role of interactivity in this? AI is able to create something out of predetermined material, and that's exactly what we're doing. I'm setting some parameters. I'm creating a pool of material from which the artificial intelligence is allowed to put together other music, generate music based on the rules that I create. I'm getting to know Laila, and it will be a lifelong process, most likely millions of years.
Imagine artistic designing on stage, but not depending on time or place. Wherever the creative team is and wherever the co-production partners are, you all can meet together on a virtual stage where you can check the variation of sets and lights, even performers, 2 years before the premiere. The Finnish National Opera and Ballet is proud to present the XR production simulation tool for performing arts. It offers a next-level digital workflow for the stage art organization that produce performances that require combining work of multiple departments, all specialized in different aspects of the show. So far, we have made a photorealistic 3D model of our stage and modeled some existing productions. These models can now be viewed on a platform that can be visited in virtual reality, with virtual reality glasses, but also without on a flat screen if wanted. At the next stage of our pilot project, we will be adding on the platform functionalities that allow for making set and light changes all in high detail and in a real time. This will make it possible for artistic teams, designers, and technical departments to design productions well in advance, benefiting the whole opera organizations and the possible co-production partners too. All this means a remarkable gain in terms of efficient use of the precious and often scarce stage time, and it can result in designs that are artistically more carefully considered and in solutions that are sustainable and reliable in terms of productions and technicalities. At the time that we live in, these flexible digital workflows can replace some of the more manual, slow workflows that have the restraints of all required physical presence or building physical models. But they can also be taken into use in tandem to support the existing workflows and gradually build towards the future of all of our organizations' best practices. The possibilities are infinite. This is not future, this is now. And now please, fly with me inside our virtual stage.
Padron siamo tutti morti. Non si tace di
I'm sure we all have already a lot of experience and knowledge around these new digital workflows and the exciting immersive experiences. Again, I'm happy to invite all of you to join us on this journey, and I suggest we form an ecosystem where we can learn from each other's experiences. We'll be in touch via email in the early autumn. Thank you very much.
Thank you to everybody in the Finnish National, Gita, Timo, Lili, and Esa-Pekka for an interesting introduction, and also the appeal to us to actually join and participate in this project. Nicholas, do you want to say something more about?
I don't know. You said what I was going to say. Thank you.
Okay.
I mean, do we have time for one question to our Finnish team, or must we move straight on to the next?
I think we should allow one question. Or maybe the presentation was so clear for today, for now. So there you are. We tried to see if somebody has a question for you.
Otherwise, they can contact us and we'll send them your contact details, which might be easier for a follow-up.
Very good. Let's do that.
I have many questions, but I'm not going to ask them now. Let us move on to our thematic reports. And by way of thank you so much. And by way of introduction, I will merely say this, that as I've already said, a lot of work has been done over the last 2.5 months, coordinated by Opera Europa. And the next half hour is going to be 6 little reports of 6 areas where that has been done by members who've been involved in it. Then we will have a interactive debate in which please ask your questions, make your statements, and check in through the chat function. Tomorrow, by contrast, we're talking about the future and how we try to forge new ways, new ideas of making opera work from the autumn onwards. But we begin our reports today with the first one, which is from Anna Maria Mail from Parma.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to meet you all, even if not in person, but we hope we will be able to see each other very soon. I asked Audrey if I can, how we, we would like to share the video. Eccoci. Okay, here we are. I'm glad to share the work we have been doing in these 2.5 months. That have been hard for everyone, and we had to be reactive and to produce something for our community, and at the same time try to keep together also some ideas about the future we are going to face, which is almost uncertain. Let me say very few things about our theater and the way we are funded. We are funded by public sector for 46% and by private sector, which means sponsors and commercial activities we do, and box office for 54%. And the private sector means also some part of these commercial activities that we do with our sponsor, together. Some activities of co-marketing, and then, of course, traditional sponsorship and donation by private. The 2020 was for Parma a very important year because we were supposed to be Italian capital of culture, and we prepared a special project for this occasion. And when the lockdown started, we were almost there to make our debut with Pelléas and Mélisande. It was a beautiful production that we loved very much, and just 1 week before the debut, we shut down the theater. We registered a kind of social shock for the workers, and we had to suddenly organize a communication that became constant for the following weeks with the artists, with our audience, and of course with our sponsors. The first thing we did is arranging a Festival Verdi home streaming season, 13 titles that have been given of course, for free. And we had more than 100,000 contacts, and the production have been seen by 122 different countries. We also put some titles on Opera Vision. We try to keep the relation with our international community as close as possible. We also organized some activities for the kids, because thinking of families obliged to stay indoor with the kids not going to school, we thought it was worthwhile to offer something to them too. And so we put on our website some surprise tales, some opera pills, Reggio Young drawings that could be downloaded and colored, and then a tutorial in 4 different moments to give the opportunity to the kids to build their own theater and to realize the interpreters and invent some stories and then send them to us. And actually, we have received 100 of these, which is very, very good, because we had a confirmation that it was worthwhile and badly needed. So we kept sitting on the table of our association, of course, Opera Europa, then the Association of the Teatri di Tradizione, ATIT. We kept strong communication with our trade unions to inform them of what we were going to do. We shared also perspective and project and common problems with Italia Festival, because Teatro Reggio has a season and then has Festival Verdi. And then we kept our communication very strong with our board. So even with the theater shut in lockdown, there was a lot of activities from remote to share informations, best practice, or even to have the opportunity to discuss the problem that we were suddenly facing. And this has been a great help. But we decided to not stop, and so we launched an academy project with the l'Accademia di Sartoria that we will begin in November, but we decided to launch it during the lockdown, also to give a kind of to communicate that we were shut down, but not silent, not doing nothing. Then we planned extra maintenance work. We started planning alternative production for the future, and actually next week we will announce a Festival Verdi with an alternative artistic project. And we planned new activities for sponsors. So counseling project. We produce gadgets for them for Christmas with a brand. We made a project for indoor performances in the place of where they do produce their goods. And then we proposed them in this very difficult period some welfare activities for the workers. This kept us busy, kept us alive, but produced a very good result that we have been able to inform our large community that we were alive and we were preparing to come back. When in 2021, no, that's too late, but we have to think that probably also for next year, we must be able to invent something that would allow us to go back smoothly to the times, and to the activities that we did just until a couple of months ago. That's it. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Anna. I would now like to pass the baton to Sebastian Schwarz.
Hello, everyone. I was asked to speak a bit about the work we are currently doing as the artistic and the producing work within all our companies. Well, we know that together we bring together the most suitable artists and circumstances for any given project. Multiply that by the number of productions that are needed to form a meaningful operatic season, and we get a Sisyphean task in the best of times. Now, currently, in the current global crisis, this becomes of even more Sisyphean proportions globally. Clearly, we're all dealing with cancellations of productions due to government-ordered closures of our performance spaces. We are trying to understand globally and each individual country and legislation for itself what force majeure means and whether it is applicable in these circumstances. And if, for how long? Are cancellations for the autumn covered by force majeure if they go beyond the currently valid government orders, which might only close our theaters until the middle of June, as in the case of Italy, or until the end of summer? If we cancel productions for beyond then, is that currently covered by force majeure, or do we have to negotiate fees with our artists? We are trying to find fair ways of treating artists who are currently deprived of all work opportunities and therefore of ways of generating income. We need these artists the moment we are allowed to open our theaters again. So we want them to be treated fairly now. Is, in this context, a working group from Opera Europa members met with representatives of YAMA to study ways of how we can safeguard the interests of artists better in our future contracts. The need for rehearsal fees and the compensation of travel expenses became evident. That might sound a bit obvious to most of you who live in countries, who work in countries where that is an obvious thing that is part of the contracts. I happen to live in a country where that's not so obvious and where we actually need to think about this. The possibility of an escrow account was aired, was ventured, where some money is put aside into an escrow account, which becomes available in the case of an emergency cancellation, so that there is a fund ready to be given to artists who are otherwise victims of losing all their work and income. And other issues that we've discussed, and of course the discussion continues. We are finding ways of continuing through an increased online offer. And in that context, of course, we have to ask ourselves whether the current broadcasting and distribution rights in our artist contracts are sufficient for operating an opera company in the 21st century. Probably not. We are working out multiple scenarios. We're working on plans. We're all working on plans A, B, C for whenever we might finally be allowed to fill our houses again to capacity, rather than only up to 200 or 500. Will it be from the beginning of the next season? Will we be able to open our next season with proper opera productions from October, from December, maybe from the next year altogether? And what does that mean for the new productions that we're having to move into other slots right now? What are the ripple effects caused to others by our moving these productions and thus asking artists to withdraw from wherever they are contracted to make themselves available for our new projects? Happening, and this will increasingly be happening the moment we all stop crying about right now and look into the future and say that, oh, we might have to move our productions to next April, May, June. And now we want, of course, the artists that are already otherwise contracted to come back for our productions. We're working on understanding better the existing repertoire of chamber operas that might work within the limits of social distancing. We are commissioning new work that deals with the current situation, or that can be produced at lower cost, and again within the limits of social distancing. Maybe this is a chance to finally work out more efficient ways of producing and co-producing that will allow to actually reduce production costs now that we are pretty much forced to reduce production costs due to the limited box office income that can help to balance our budgets. We're all held to deliver balanced budgets at the end of the year. So these are just a few of the issues. I was given 5 minutes. I've probably gone over 5 minutes. There are many more issues that artistically and from a producing point of view we're all working on. Clearly, there's room for discussion and room for ideas. Thank you very much, Nicholas.
Thank you for your overview, Sebastian, very much. Next, we move to business and finance and to Alexandra Stampler-Braun from Deutsche Oper am Rhein in Düsseldorf.
Hello, everybody. Hi, yes, welcome. And I'm so glad and happy that so many of you are able to be part of this online conference. I was asked to give a brief summary of two very popular Zoom meetings that took place in mid and end of April. There were General Artistic and Business Directors Forum and the Artistic and Finance Forum. At these two meetings, we shared our company's current situations and presented the result of an economic impact survey that were circulated by Opera Europa in early April. We tried to get a quick snapshot of these very uncertain times at the beginning of the corona crisis. The survey questions were similar to the ones of Opera America and Opera Latino America, who have also collected benchmark figures. The aim was to assess the impact of our members resulting from the closures of our theater and opera houses and the cancellation of performances until the end of this season. The survey was completed by half of our full members, and this very high number of replies allowed us to draw conclusions about the sector in Europe. And this was very interesting. I would like to show you now some important top-line facts that came out of this survey. The estimated lost revenue on average is over 2 million euros per company. For all the around 200 Opera Europa members, it would indicate a loss of revenue of at least 400 million euros in this season only. The impacts do, of course, differ from opera company to opera company, depending on funding levels and the relationship between fixed costs and earned income. For the majority of companies, the public funding is expected to be maintained, but about a quarter of us, so about 25%, anticipate public funding cuts. And we will still see how sponsorship and other forms of income generated through fundraising will develop as the economy as a whole is hit hard by the corona crisis. Around half of our members benefit from a government relief package, including furloughed staff or temporary unemployment schemes. 80% of the companies have committed to pay their fixed staff till the end of this season. Some countries also offer relief packages for freelance artists. And this public help, together with around a third of the opera companies offering non-contractual compensation and offering deferred payments to guest artists, should cushion the situation and provide a bridge and enable artists to survive in this immediate future, like Sebastian has mentioned just before. Many opera companies offer those freelance artists on lower fees a compensation for cancelled performances. To mention maybe one more interesting fact from this first survey from early April, amongst the companies who replied, around 2,500 freelance contracts were cancelled. So if you were to multiply that with the full membership of Opera Europa, it would reach around 5,000 guest and freelance artists who have had contracts cancelled. Half of them have been offered replacement contracts in future seasons. In the meanwhile, we all know that the topic of dealing with guest artists is very complex and there cannot be one solution for all Opera Europa members. Even within one country, we know there are big differences between the opera companies on how they deal with this issue. Another very similar survey will be sent out next week. It should now be easier to present figures and better estimates than it was in early April. Please complete these 13 questions. It won't take very long. I'm sure you will have all these headlines, figures handy. These facts will help us to lobby for support in valuing our sector, to raise attention and to support our own campaigns for recognition in our own country. At the end of this summer, it is planned to collect facts and figures with a different survey around the changes in programming for the next season. Right now, there is no certainty, of course, of where and when we will reopen and under which circumstances our venues will present opera and ballet. There are, of course, different approaches in all the different European countries. If, for example, we think about the rules for capacity in our venues or restrictions on audience numbers. So we will have to think about questions like, to what extent will our former business models need to be replaced? How do we budget for the next season and work parallel developing productions for different scenarios, and how long can we do that? And as we know, it might not be the peak yet, and we have still to feel the full impact. However, we hope that you find these results and figures from the first survey to be of use for your own understanding and your own search for support. And we look forward to being able to offer you more useful comparisons, benchmarks, and a wider picture in the future after the next survey. I would like to thank the team of Opera Europa for all the great work you've done in the last few weeks to keeping us connected, because I think right now it's such an important way of also showing support for each other, learning from each other, and also to get a sense of community. And I hope you, as I did in the past, you don't feel that you're not by yourself in this crisis, by ways of joining these online meetings and exchanging our expertise and our ideas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alexandra, for your super clear summary. Much better than the Opera Europa team could have done. I only hope that it's not prophetic that the poster behind you announces Götterdämmerung. I would now like to move to our technical and production group and to Bob Brunson.
Hello, Nicholas. Hello, Brigitta, Audrey. Thank you for having me on this call. Of course, thanks to our hosts in Finland, who always leave me a little bit depressed about the state of the art of their operation and how they are, in fact, not sitting behind a wall, but actually are on stage and doing the most wonderful things that we all are so passionate about. So my name is Bob Branson. I'm the production director of the Royal Opera House Covent Garden in London. I work with the steering group of the Technical and Production Forum, and I'll tell you a little bit about what we have been going through the last couple of months. We have been meeting about every 3 weeks or so to share our experience and what we have been encountered over the start of the COVID virus lockdown, and the things that we have come up to try to fight it, but also the measurements we have taken if staff were still working on the stages or the workshops, or perhaps were sent home. We found out that there was a big change or a big diverse between the north and the south. People in Spain were locked down pretty tightly, where people in the Scandinavian countries were still allowed to come in and do work on maintenance or refurb operations, or even build set or costumes. So there was a big divide about what people could do, and there was some shocking moments for people that were thinking, "Oh, you still are able to come into the building? Well, actually, here's the military police in the street." So there was a lot of emotional exchange of our experience as well. We talked a lot about what it meant to send staff home and how we took care of our staff in the technical and production departments while they were working from home. For some of the technical department people, that's really a difficult thing. Some of they could work from home from a laptop and a computer, but all these people that work on stage, what do you do with them? How do you keep them motivated? How do you address mental health issues? How do you keep them connected to the, as my CEO, Alex Beard, always says, the Royal Opera House family? And how do you make sure that they are looked after? Of course, there were many difficult questions about what can be done with social distancing measurements for those who are still open. What can we do? What can we think about making protocols for reopening buildings? We shared a lot of that with our community, and also stuff you can also find on the document center of the Opera Europa website. I think our colleagues in Finland were really, really clear of what measurements they took, what kind of tips and hints they could give a lot of us, which we actually used quite extensively to make sure that we have plans in place when our staff would be able to come back. Also, of course, that is very important for them to know that they're coming back into a safe environment. We talked also about a lot about productions that we have built. As you can imagine, they're still in some of the buildings that have been left very hastily, sets standing there on a stage or in a workshop, finished or unfinished, or rehearsed or just finishing rehearsal. So there's a lot of talk about what we've done with these productions that I might still be standing there. Few people mentioned co-production. If they want to pursue their co-productions, where are their co-productions located? Are we able to get these co-productions out of that particular country? Are the transport corporations still working? So there's a lot of anxiety and things that we were worried about, which were really very useful to share in our groups. What people would thought that were really useful. We talked a lot in smaller groups, but also with our extensive family of Opera America, where we have a joint weekly meetings to talk about these things. Myself, with my technical directors of the opera houses in the UK, Scottish Opera, North, Glyndebourne, ENO, speak every week. And you can imagine that the situation in the UK is quite difficult. Most of the companies in the UK are not heavily subsidized and sometimes get 10% of their income from the Arts Council England. So lost in revenue is a really serious threat about existence of these arts institutions in the UK. In our community, we also talked about sending staff on furlough, which is a system that some of the countries use for getting government support of paying wages of a large group of people that we can't really actually put to work now. We talked also a lot about what the future might be, how we would come back, if it would be outside venue performances, or other kind of activities that we can do. Lots of people were supporting community projects that would really be beneficial to make sure that the importance of our arts institution were also seen by other people in the community. Not only on the technical forum, we had several meetings. There's also a couple of branches of that technical and production forum that is the Tech Set Forum, where technical managers and workshop chiefs work together. They've developed a lot of health and safety protocols. We have the Costume Forum, where people talk about the challenges of working in close proximity in the future with artists and dancers or singers. How to do fittings, how to make a safe environment to do hair and makeup. These artists work with casts, and how to keep social distancing while doing a wig or applying any makeup of artists. Such things were discussed there. We actually managed in this difficult time to start a new forum. We called it the Lighting Managers Forum, where we discussed the use of new LED lighting on stage versus how we transfer historical repertoire into a new computer system. There's a lot of things to be done there. So as a part of the Opera Europa family, the Technical Production Forum Evidence Offsprings continue to meet regularly. We have a really good community that shares best practices and support each other in these difficult times. I think a lot of time, even the bit more soft topics are proven very valuable for our members to share their anxieties and the solutions that they can find. So thank you again for allowing our forum to be here present on this Opera Europa conference, and looking forward to see everyone hopefully in the future. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Bob, for your overview of your really busy activities in all this time. And thank you for raising the question of looking after the staff, which is a perfect lead into our next report, which comes from Hanna Fontana back in Helsinki.
Hello, everyone, and greetings from Helsinki. My name is Hanna Fontana, and I work as the Human Resources Manager in the Finnish National Opera and Ballet. I have some slides, just a very short presentation, actually. Go directly to the next page, Audrey. Our Human Resources Forum has had some online meetings this spring, and I've collected, as in the role of the coordinator, some of the main themes we have been discussing this spring. I think in all the opera houses, the human resources people among all the others have been really busy this spring, because it has been a lot to do with the personnel and how the work is organized, and so it's been a lot of organizing the work during the spring. There are houses where people have been completely working remote. Then there are houses where people have partly worked in-house. And then due to the loss of the ticket sales, so there has been salary cuts, or there has been part-time work, or temporary layoffs, or furloughs, or other work organization systems. People have perhaps worked fully, or they're part-timely, or then they have not had any kind of work obligation. And of course, the human resources people have mostly dealt with our own staff, but of course, it's also been the discussing about freelancers and guests, for example, the force majeure situations. Well, regarding Corona, of course, a lot of health issues. We have had Corona groups in our organizations. We have had maybe possible Corona cases, and I know that in some houses there has also been very, very sad situations and deaths. There has been testing, a lot of discussion about testing, Corona testing, antibody testing, and then the situation when there has been a positive case, and then the systems regarding the quarantines. Our people in opera houses, in these very social working communities, have had a lot of feelings, a lot of psychological and mental stress during the spring. I think it is a very strong feeling that many people feel that they really have lost the working community around, and it has caused, for example, the feelings of loneliness and anxiety. People have had their fear of getting ill, and of course being exposed to the virus. There has been worries regarding the salary, the economical situation due to salary cuts or other systems. And we have also in our group talked about how we in the human resources departments and also as supervisors, how can we support our personnel in this difficult situation? Either those who are remote, training at home, working at home, or then those who are working in-house and having different kind of risks regarding the work. You can, Audrey, put the next, yeah. And I think now, of course, well, we do have different summer holiday times here in North. We actually are already starting the summer holiday time, but of course now the big discussion in all the houses and human resources groups and Corona preparedness groups is how to come back work after the summer holidays. What happens? Are we able to come? When are we able to come? How is it possible? Is it safe? How will the work be organized? What kind of risk assessments are they needed to do in order to make the work of a dancer or a singer or a musician safe? How to respect the distances or the protection and so. So the big question now for Human Resources Forum, of course, now is how do we ensure the safe working place? We are working closely with our security people, doing risk assessments, doing plans, doing guidelines, and all these things. But I guess it's a lot of open questions still. We don't know how the situation is creating and what happens then when the new season starts. I would say that one of the main themes which this spring for me especially has been very important is the importance of the internal information in this kind of crisis situation. I think we cannot underline it enough that how important is that people get regular information, which is also building up the trust and keeping up the spirit. So this has been discussed a lot. Also the importance of the leadership and supervisor work that Birgitta also mentioned at the beginning. Distance leadership is, of course, very challenging now when we are not having our people around us. So how to keep the feeling of community and how to give the trust to the personnel that the employer is taking care of the personnel. This is a big question now. So I think, like, also for the future, how to improve and really continue a very good internal information for the personnel, and also how to make the supervisor work so that it really helps the situation and gives support to our staff persons. I think this is more or less the main themes about the Human Resources Forum. We are going to continue our discussions also. I think we will still have one discussion before the summer holidays and a lot of open questions still, but we'll continue our work. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah, for those important lessons as we plan ahead into the unknown. And now for marketing and communications, I have asked my good colleague Audrey to make her presentation.
Hello again. Thank you. The Marketing and Communication Forum has met 3 times since the beginning of the crisis. It was good for our members to connect, as many felt lonely in the challenge of being the first line of communication with the audience, and we're interested to learn how other houses were dealing with the situation. One thing that was clear from the start was the Marketing and Communications Department have been very active throughout the theatre closure period. Their box office staff have been hard at work. The digital departments have been creating or reworking content, and their PR and communication departments have been reaching out and trying to make noise. Some houses have had the inspiration or energy and resources to create new platforms and produce new content to bring to their audiences. Others have made the best of archive material, but I think we can safely say that this digital dissemination, which was once peripheral to the work of an opera company, has taken on a new dimension. For Opera Vision, that has meant doubling our program with 2 new titles streamed every week, and over quadrupling our audience numbers with an average of 20,000 views per day, reaching up to now, since the beginning of our project, 9.2 million video views. That's in just over 2.5 years. Many opera companies have also taken the opportunity to make their voices heard. It's been all too apparent that in many countries, culture has not been at the forefront of the minds of governments, while it's proven that we are important employers and economic contributors. So one question that remains is whether the individual voices of opera companies are loud enough to be heard, and how these can be made stronger in collaboration, probably most effectively on a regional or national level. And although it wasn't the impetus behind the generosity of our members, several have reported positive media coverage about their efforts to help the community, whether it's in small format performances outdoors of retirement homes or costume departments sewing masks and protective gear. But an important part of the work remains the contact with the dedicated audience. In the first few weeks, the focus was on determining the policy in place for unused tickets, with the 3 main options being direct refunds, vouchers or credits on the customer's account, which allowed the cash to stay within the company and ease the cash flow for now, but would just postpone cash flow issues perhaps to next season. And the third were campaigns inviting ticket buyers to convert their purchase into donations. And it's important to note that the success of these campaigns seemed to depend on how they were approached. So personal contact over the phone or determining exactly the purpose of these donations really helped the conversion rate in comparison to a simple email blast. But the biggest challenge for the departments remains this uncertainty of next season. Some houses have chosen to defer their season announcements, but some have gone ahead as planned. And although restrictions on ticket sales could be in place in various forms, some are only putting subscriptions on sale, some are putting all tickets on sale. The very encouraging news is that for those who have opened their subscription sales, the renewal rates are excellent in the first few weeks. So that indicates that audiences are ready to support their institutions and to come back when it will be safe. And here again, communication departments have an important role to play in reassuring the public that serious measures are being taken, not only for the artists and crew and staff of the Opera House, but also for the audience. And for the sales department, the most challenging part of their work to come might be the necessity to start tracking much more closely their audience. That means getting direct contact detail for every person that sits in the auditorium, rather than simply getting one contact detail per booking. This has been in place in other countries. But during our last online meeting, we held a poll for our members, and it showed that the main reason to reopen the opera company with a reduced audience or with reduced activity was to make sure that the Opera House stays relevant in its community. And as you will have understood, the current disinterest of governing bodies makes the importance of creating a voice for culture in general, and opera in particular, of urgent importance. So the timing of World Opera Day on the 25th of October is quite perfect, when seasons will be reopening and we hope activity will be regaining a bit of energy and dynamism. Our members will hear more about this during our General Assembly later, but we are offering to use the emblematic figure of Beethoven and his message of universal brotherhood to celebrate the resilience of opera houses and the progressive return to theaters in the autumn. No matter in what form, we hope you'll join the celebrations. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. I couldn't have said it better. Now, for questions and answers and comments, I hand over to Aviel Khan as ringmaster.
Hello. Good afternoon, everybody from Geneva. Nicholas has handed me over the wonderfully pleasant task to moderate a virtual debate and discipline you guys to talk no longer than 1 minute in your different contributions. I tried to start this because we don't actually have a real topic for the debate, but I think it's might be good to try to focus and summarize in very few words what has been proposed by the different forum reports. So we have heard by Anna Maria, especially the creative ideas of an opera house, how to reach out and how to keep contact and how to, let's say, entertain and engage their audiences in a full lockdown. And I think another important issue we have raised, Nicholas, also for the general directors, is the question of advocacy for our sector and for our art form in these days, which has been an important question, especially in the beginning, where we felt like most governments didn't care about the arts and what's going to happen to them in this time. Then we have heard a lot about the legal aspects of cancellations of the current situation when it comes to deal with artists, reshuffling season, and streaming contracts that might have not been covered so well with our existing artists' contracts, and about chamber versions and the future of only playing Haydn operas and Baroque operas, possibly, or contemporary chamber operas, who knows, or string quartet versions of Parsifal by the Artistic and Administration Forum. We have heard the concerns about public fundings, maintenance of subsidies in the near future, when taxes might be missed as income of our governments, and a question of relief packages of the different countries to artists, and maybe rethinking our business models. We have heard about the HR problems in staying in touch with our employees, of keeping them close when they're far away, keeping them engaged, informing them with possibly information that is reliable and not just gossip or maybe as reliable as the weather forecasts in certain areas. And after they announce rain, it's sun is shining. And protocols about how to restart the work in our opera houses. And eventually from marketing, the challenging for digital offers, how they are perceived. Actually, maybe sometimes the digital offers are better than what we had before. I've had compliments by my audiences that the video presentation of the new season is much, much more appreciated than any kind of season presentation that has been done before. We did that only because we had no other chance. So certain things might really open opportunities for us. And then, of course, the extreme work for box offices to deal with our dear customers, how to keep them related, how to keep them, motivate them to donate, not to being reimbursed, and how to plan a season that we don't know exactly how it will look like. Lots and lots of challenges. So to open the debate or the discussion about all this, I want to give you all a moment to reflect before I might call myself one of the first intervenients. But if I understand well, we have Mark Scorza here from Opera America. And as we have heard a lot of concerns of our European forums, it might be interesting to hear how is the situation summarized in the United States. What are your main worries? Are they totally identical with us in Europe? Or do you have maybe some insights or inputs for us that we have not heard? So Mark, if you're here, maybe you can share in 1 minute, some of the American perspectives.
Well, Aviel, thank you so much. And it's a pleasure to see all my European friends and colleagues. What you've described as the European situation is very much the situation in North America. There is, of course, complete cancellation of performances through the spring and summer. All the summer festivals are canceled. And there is right now great concern about what is possible in the fall, largely because there is not sufficient guidance from the authorities about proper procedures to ensure the health of all of the artists and administrators and audience members. And until such guidance is provided, it is very difficult for opera companies to take on the responsibility of calling back the choristers and orchestral members and soloists into the cities to perform. So there's a real question there. Yes, our opera companies have been experimenting with digital platforms in order to remain in contact with their clients. There is some very interesting experimentation with creating work that is actually made for the digital platform. And some of our opera companies are now beginning to experiment with creating some kind of audience experience, some social experience around the digital performances. So in many ways, while we are dealing with a crisis, we are using it as an opportunity to innovate in ways that we've never even thought about until recently. But it's very much a wait and see for the fall seasons. And we're hoping that guidance comes about practical procedures, and we're hoping even more for successful vaccine and treatment.
Thank you, Mark. I think you've said one important thing, and maybe that's a good first thing to ask for some people to raise their voice in the debate, which is using the crisis as an opportunity. I don't know whether among you there are some good examples or some thoughts to share about how you have made that experience that you could use the crisis actually as an opportunity for new ways of dealing with our art form, our institutions, or our audiences. Are there any examples? Is there anyone who wants to share something with us? I do this together with Audrey, who should tell me who is lining up for a contribution.
Aviel, this is Sophie from Amsterdam. Salut.
Salut, bonjour.
I'm happy to share what we are doing in Amsterdam, or at least what we are trying to put in place in Amsterdam in order to build an opportunity within this crisis. It's complex, but we are trying to do it. We, in the past years, the company has invested in young opera makers in the country from the various art schools and conservatoires. And we had the intention to give them the next opportunities during our next festivals, Opera Forward festivals. And now that we have entered this phase of uncertainty, not knowing how much we can plan live and online, so we're going towards hybrid formats. I thought it's exactly the right moment to really involve these young makers who know how to use these new technologies and offer them this opportunity to create something in that situation. So we have no time to do this because here in Amsterdam, we would like to open next season on 5th September with these projects, with these young makers, because we cannot go ahead with a main production of Mephistopheles. So I think for every country, it could be a special moment in time to really collaborate with the young makers in the country.
Thank you, Sophie. Very good point. Chances for young makers. Other contributions, other similar, interesting, enriching experience.
Javier, can I come in?
Yes,
it's
please.
Birgitta. No, this is more of a reflection combined with a question. And it occurred actually in my own company the other day when, because we have been talking a lot about, as all of you, different scenarios and how to make smaller productions, smaller formats. Can we even keep some of the regular classical titles and make them, change them around and make them in sort of a smaller productions? And that, of course, comes along then with the case that we also have to have smaller orchestra because of the distance, the restrictions of the distance, and that goes for the chorus as well. And somebody came to me and said, well, are the opera companies now seeing a change where you actually could drive your programs, but with much smaller companies? Smaller choruses, smaller orchestras. There are smaller companies, also freelancing companies who used to do this. And we have in Sweden opera houses where they actually play the real big stuff with very small orchestras and sometimes choruses. But I think the reflection was relevant that is there a possibility to be afraid for artists today that we, through the technology and through the situation we have been forced to find solutions now for the future, that we might get an idea, and I will take it even further on, that our owners, the politicians, might also see that, yeah, it's actually possible to drive an opera with much smaller companies. It's a reflection, and I wanted to hear, is there any other among us that has occurred or somehow has been thinking, or you had this question coming up one or the other way?
Can I add something?
Laura, please.
Well, first, in reply to what Birgitta just said, we negotiated with our government about putting our workers on furlough very early and very successfully. And of course, they tried to pressure us and ask us if we didn't want to let some workers go. And we said, absolutely not. And I think that at the moment, we really need to fight and show governments how important culture is for society. In Germany, there was a big debate based on the fact that they decided which children could go to the nursery according to what their parents did for a living, and if it was relevant or not relevant for the system. And so our workers found out that if you work for a cultural institution, you're not relevant for the system. Because of that, the houses of culture here in Hanover united, and we started an initiative called Staying Alive. Culture opens, as in opens relationships, opens doors, etc. And we are all displaying banners now throughout the city on all cultural institutions, because I think in such a precarious situation, it's really important to find partners with mutual interests in your city, be it other cultural institutions, other businesses, in order to show your strength. And in terms of creative ideas or other solutions, there's great fear here of singing and singing in groups. And the city is now organizing a way for choruses to rehearse out of doors in Hanover. There are a lot of choruses in the city, not only amateur choruses, professional choruses, and I think we're all going to be given a different location where we can go outside and rehearse. And in fact, we are preparing a small season with a chamber opera, evening of ballet, concerts with music by with brass instruments and arias, all for the Baroque Garden Theater here in Herrenhausen. So we've
thank you, Laura. I have to limit you to 1 minute, otherwise it's getting a bit long. I think the duality between, of course, big institutions that have to advocate that they're relevant for the system, and on the other hand, of course, the will, and I think that's nevertheless not new, of more light structures, of more flexible structures, which might represent more the future of how our institutions can be sustainable is a big question that is raised these days. We have another small 20 minutes left, and it might be interesting to move a bit to the question of how reopening our theaters and how getting back to a normal life. In Switzerland, we are quite forward in the development. We've had an announcement of our government yesterday that we can start as of beginning of June to perform for 300 people again. And the Swiss Theatre Association has actually prepared a very strong document of how to work under the current situation. And what is interesting in this, and might be interesting to hear something from you guys, of course, we live in a dynamic that is changing all the time. What has been the reality 2 weeks ago is not the reality tomorrow. What is the reality tomorrow might be changing 2 weeks. And I wonder how, and in Switzerland, I can just quickly say we have really very much united the theaters all to work together to make the advocacy for our sector and get concepts that are taken seriously and approved by the government to work again, to perform again. And that has been actually very helpful to reopen our theaters, to getting them back to work. I wonder, how do you in different countries, especially maybe those who are already getting slowly but surely out of the lockdown, out of the total lockdown, how have you worked to prepare to come back into the working situation? Are there concrete examples out there? We have a question from Opera Froco in Paris, or I see some names on the list, or maybe there are people who want to contribute especially to this subject or topic.
Yes, this is Pedro from Opera Fuoco in Paris. I'm the artistic advisor of the company. I'm sorry, I'm not contributing in this new topic. I wanted to talk about the last topic about our contribution in this new era.
Yeah.
Very quickly, we were supposed to perform Nozze di Figaro in Levallois, our city of residence near Paris. And well, Opera Foucault, we have a young artist program, a 4-year young artist program with many young singers. And now our artistic director, David Stern, didn't want only to cancel Nozze di Figaro, because it's really interesting for this young artist to perform for the first time their Figaro or Susanna. So he managed to find a place in Paris, very, very nice place, private place, that's called l'Atelier de la Main d'Or, in the center of Paris, near Bastille. And this, the person who owns this place accepted to welcome this small production of Nozze di Figaro, only with a piano, and in all his house, in the room and in the, I don't know, in the hall and in the backyard. And we are filming it with a young and wonderful artist who works in cinema and in theater and opera, Alexandre Camerlot. Many of the French directors, I think they know him. And we are doing like a series, like a Netflix, and it will be called Figaro in the City. And this is our answer of a company like Opera Foco to this crisis, not to giving up a production who was supposed to be a classical staged version, but to adapt in a new format. That's the contribution.
Thank you very much. I would say let's keep this parallel, new formats, opportunities within the crisis, and on the other hand, ways out of the crisis. I think we would be interested to hear, I have Catarina Molder from Portugal. I want to remind you all, you just have 1 minute to speak. So try to really limit it. Catarina,
sure.
Word is yours.
Well, I think we have to keep very proactive. Here we had distancing measures last week that were condemning all the performing system, and we were in a kind of doing also a dialogue, but also writing articles for newspapers, being really proactive, and the government change into a much more coherent and fair situation. Also, I think it's time for a paradigm shift in the opera business. It's always difficult to make big changes, and the crisis, I think, has the legitimation to provide this context to operate the changes. And I think we have to move on to really work very precisely on to conquer a younger audience to our business. And since the younger people, younger up till 50 years old actually, are less vulnerable to this crisis, I think it's time, and there is then the issue of social distancing. We have to provide smaller formats that we can produce each other, and to reach out younger audiences that have nothing to do right now because all the pop festivals were canceled. And we have this unique opportunity that we have to take. In my small company, I'm trying to do that with the launching of a new festival here in Lisbon that last week I was going to cancel. This week I still have hope. And well, that's what I wanted to tell you. So go ahead, work to conquer younger audiences. We all are going to win, and all our ecosystem will profit of this shift that we really need.
Thank you very much, Catarina. The younger audiences, of course, are always a topic for us. And I think that, I've also been thinking of actually the streaming, of course, is another opportunity we have, because first, on the one hand, we educate our older audiences to get used to their digital realities, which might relieve our box offices and get us easier to communicate with them. With the older audience, on the other hand, of course, if the audiences that are endangered cannot come to the opera houses, we might really have to develop streaming subscriptions for them. And by those streaming subscriptions, maybe they can subsidize cheaper prices even for the people who really come to the theater. That might open up free seats to lower prices for those who can really come to our theater. Food for thoughts. Do I see other people who want to contribute to the one or the other topic? While you might line up, I just want to say the concept of the Swiss theaters is available. I don't know whether Dieter Kagi is with us here. Dieter is the president of the Swiss Theater Union, and Dieter has been very much the general manager of the theater in Biel-Solothurn. Dieter has been very much moderating this, and based on his concept, we start working again in Swiss opera houses these days. So I don't know, Dieter, if you're here, if you want to say a few words about that. But maybe Dieter is not here. I just saw him on the list of participants yesterday. 183 people, it's very hard for me to see.
But Aviel, can I make a comment?
Yes, please, Brigitta.
No, I want to go back to where we started. I can't help myself seeing the words of to quote Esa-Pekka Salonen, when he actually told about Beyond Opera and the opera Laila. And I have to put the question on, is this not the time to start to look into even more new composed pieces in other formats, in other way of producing, whether it's digital or what, or on stage? But somehow we seem to still be stuck. We are also producing, of course, the old classical titles. Nevertheless, we have 3 totally new pieces for in the fall in the program. But I think, I used to say in the earlier conferences, there must be a time where we could have 50% of new composed music and 50% of the old classical titles. And maybe this is the time to use the opportunity now to introduce. And they might be short pieces even, because we're saying that we want to get to the young audience, and we know that they might not feel the need of sitting for 3, 4, 5 hours. I think we have a fantastic moment now if we would like to change around the way we have 80% of old titles and 20% of new titles, squeeze it around and make it even.
Thank you, Brigitta. You just announced the end of the big romantic opera repertoire, and finally, The Rape of Lucretia will be the most performed operas worldwide, and more modern than that. I have from Stephanie Wippel, who can talk about Austria for a moment, because Austria has.
I cannot hear you.
Hello?
Am I the only one? Oh, there you are.
Stephanie, I said Austria is one of the most advanced countries also in restarting work. I've heard that the Wiener Philharmoniker are going to play a concert every day next week. So please,
exactly.
Stephanie.
Yeah, hello everyone from Vienna, Austria. It is true that obviously we're one of the first countries to open. We didn't think so, because for months all the ministers and all the government in Austria basically ignored everything that had to do with culture. There was a big uproar. The Secretary for Culture had to actually step back 1 week ago and was replaced because there was such an uproar in the cultural community, because there was no rules for us at all. We were just all closed down and nobody spoke to us. Nobody told us how it's going to go on. So for 5 days now, we have a new Secretary of Culture, and she realized very quickly that something had to be done. And now the rules were announced through September. And these rules basically are that we are allowed to perform in front of an audience of 100 people starting on June 1st, in front of 250 people starting July 1st. And from August 1st onwards, it is 1,000 people, respectively 500 if you do not have a security measures concept. So we are currently working on this concept in order to present this to the Minister of Culture in order to be allowed to perform in front of 1,000 people starting August 1st. I cannot tell you too much about the program we're doing in June, because I've not been involved.
1 minute, actually.
Okay, perfect. Good, great. So yeah, that's it basically. So we're working on measures to ensure that our audience is safe, including, of course, reducing our seats to half of what we can offer. And we currently, this is a surprise for a lot of colleagues I hear, we currently do think and assume that we do not have to apply any rules that are currently viable to our performance orchestra or chorus. So we think that we can rehearse and perform the way we used to.
That will be, of course, very much the discussion of tomorrow, planning for an uncertain future, and what to do with these circumstances we might be given to perform in. I have Anastasia Razumovskaya from Moscow. I think the Russian situation, of course, where it's still quite strict, is interesting to hear about. You were the last that were still doing big operas where all the others were already closed. How is it now from Moscow, Anastasia?
Hi, hello. Can you hear me? Is it okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So hello, everybody. It's very interesting to be part of this conference and listen to all the experience from all over the world. It looks like that in Moscow we're not going to be able to perform through the summer in any ways, like no summer festivals, nothing, not even for reduced number of the audience. It maybe we will start in September. We don't know yet. We hope that we will be able. So, and I wanted just quickly to say that among other, like speaking about opportunities, we did of course a lot of like streaming. We contributed our the recordings of our performances to online platforms here for free for for audience. But what we noticed that our education program, the studio of Moscow of our music theater, attracted a lot of interest and a lot of audience from a different, like people of different age and of people from all over the Russia. So they connected to all our online activities, which included the the presentations or lectures about like history, about work of the theater, about professions which involved in the work of the theater. And we were very, very happy to notice that interest. So people who would never otherwise join, because of course first we transferred all those activities online, and then we were happy to see that we attract the attention of people from all over Russia and even those who speak Russian from all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Anastasia. Yeah, of course we all realize that by digital streamings we can reach much more people live than we can in our theaters. So maybe the coronavirus will finally show us that we don't need those theaters anymore because we are much more effective digital. I hope not, but of course it is an opportunity. We have 2 or 3 minutes left. Sebastian Schwarz, again from Torino, enlighten us with something that we have not heard or talked about yet, or something.
Absolutely. In Italy, we are allowed to perform from June 15th in front of audiences. Nobody thought about the fact that we have to let our workers in first to prepare something that can then be performed from June 15th. So there are fights about with the unions and with interpreting the laws. So that's something you all might want to make sure your governments consider when they give you permission to come back. 200 people in closed spaces, including performers. So for the size of our opera houses, not so efficient. 1,000 up to 1,000 people so far outside, again including performers. What we are dealing with is, of course, the various requirements of sanitation, of how to let the workers back in. We're at the point where we are about to let workers back in. What do we give them to do? We want to bring them back from furlough, therefore to full employment, to full pay. But of course, that needs to be justified. We need to have something for them to do that is meaningful for our companies and create some sort of profit, not necessarily economic, but some sort of use for us. So I think that those are the things I think we should consider when coming back to create committees, not just with unions, but workers' representatives and specialists from the outside who make sure that our structures are safe to come back to. And workers need to be safe. That's just one of the many things to take care of.
Thank you, Sebastian. You make us aware of all the challenges we are going to face. And indeed, I think one of the big questions of all of this will be who and how it's going to be paid for all of this. Because, of course, performing an opera for 300 people is not really a sustainable model, unless, of course, it's an opera for a very small orchestra and a very small group of performers on stage. I think bottom line here is creative, new ideas of thinking out of the boxes will be needed more than ever for our sector and for every country, and I think for every company. Be proactive to prepare with your fellow companies, because every country has different rules. So my chorus who has to come back to work next week, if they're going to tell me in France they do so and so, I will tell them maybe, but in Switzerland we are doing so and so, because in France they have been on a total lockdown for 2 months now, whereas in Switzerland we have been walking along the lake shores all the time. So nothing is comparable, but I think within the countries it's very important to prepare those concepts, protocols of the sector to come back to work, help each other, because together you are strong. And I think Opera Europe will certainly help on a European level, of an international level, to give you ideas and insights and support to develop your own concept. I think I have to close this session here to give you a little break. Nicholas, maybe you want to round up in 1 minute or 30 seconds and lead to the thing after the break.
Big thanks, Avio, and to all who contributed. Do we need a few minutes before we have the General Assembly? On the one hand, maybe we need to clear the room. On the other hand, I don't want to lose you. Instructions, please, Audrey.
Okay, well, listen, I think we might want to do a 45-second break in case anyone needs to go fetch a glass of water or whatever. I'm going to ask non-Opera Europa members to leave the room, but everyone who is an Opera Europa member, please, please, please stay on for this very exciting General Assembly.
It'll be quite short.
It will be very short, we promise. And we still have a couple of people joining us just now in time for the General Assembly, so I'd give it another minute and a half until we start. Thank you, everyone.